I'm lucky to be joined here today by two other members of the Coding Nomads team. My name's Ryan Desmond. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Coding Nomads. I'm also here with Kim Desmond, who's the other co-founder of Coding Nomads. And we're here with Jonny Scherer, who's a longtime career advisor, career mentor, all things helping our graduates take the next step after our courses and beyond. Jonny Scherer. So thanks for joining us, Jonny.
Very happy to be here.
I think we can go ahead and kind of jump into it. I'll let people in as they come, but welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. It's great to see you, and it's great to be here today. I think these career services office hours is something we actually plan to do ideally monthly, and it seems very timely, right? And so I'm really grateful to be here today with Jonny, who has all kinds of wonderful experience over many years, really just helping people get jobs and specifically their first tech jobs, although not exclusively their first, I'm sure. And so, yeah, Jonny, thanks for joining us today. And I'll turn it over to you.
Sweet. Thanks, Brian. Yeah, nice to meet you guys. I'm excited to be here. This has definitely been something that has positively impacted my life on the receiving end. I have in my introduction slide that I was once a struggling boot camp graduate myself. And so once I received some very specific help for my very specific problems, that's what kind of set me on this career path over a decade ago now. And so I'm really excited to help anybody and everybody when it comes to, getting that level of success and achieving what you had. Don't quit your daydream. Really making that manifest. So like Ryan said, I'm Jonathan Scherer. I go by Jonny because my dad's name is John, and it gets weird if I get called John. I'm not that old yet. I'm a former struggling boot camp grad. Got 10 years of experience career coaching, and I've helped over 30,000 people be successful in their job search. And that's all the way from 0 to 100. I've worked with several VP level, director level, CEO, CIO, CTO level candidates. But a majority of who I work with is mostly focusing on the career transitioners, the people that have little to no experience, but have a lot of good educational background. That's where I find that there's the most need for help like mine, and so it makes sense for me to provide help to those types of candidates. I was in the Marine Corps for several years, so I'm a veteran, and then I'm a husband and a father of 2 3/4 children. I have a third. Child due here in on June 11th. And so this is an old picture of the four of us. This is like a year and a half old, but this is my family. This is what who supports me in doing what I can do. So to kick things off, who is this information for? It's kind of for everyone. The same concepts and the same information applies whether you are that entry level candidate or whether you're that experienced candidate. It's true for those in the past, it's true for those right now, and it's true for those in the future as well. So really, at any point, what I want you all to walk away with is an understanding of the mechanisms of the job search. I'd say that the biggest problem that almost everybody has when they come to me isn't passing interviews, it's getting interviews, period. Generating the opportunity to interview. And when you really drill down and understand the individual pieces of what leads to the opportunity of getting the interview, you can really maximize and understand how each piece works. And so there's going to be three main things that we end up talking about, and all three of them are good in their own right, but they're maximally effective when you do them all together. Okay. So those three things are going to be what I call the three pillars of the job search, and that's going to be your sourcing, your content, and your context. And I'm leaving content and context purposely vague because I really want you to think about content in terms of two different types of content and context in two different types of context. And we'll get to those specifics on the following slide or the later slide. But ultimately, I want you to walk away with the ability to say, you know what? I know how to debug where I'm getting stuck in my job search. That's the biggest thing. What are you not getting, or what is the common response that you're getting? Is a rejection? Okay, that's a different solution than I'm not hearing anything from anybody, right? So this is the whole process on how you can really generate the opportunity to interview. The job search can be kind of like a dumpster fire from my own experience. I submitted something like 3,470 applications to get one interview, and this was back, I think, 2011. So it was a really tough time. just hammering through applications. What is wrong with me? What am I doing wrong? Finally have an interview, and I'm totally unprepared because I've spent all my time and energy in trying to get an interview that I totally bombed the one that I managed to land. And so again, if you have an understanding of how that process works, you can optimize every piece. Then you can spend your time in preparation equally in terms of your application or wherever you need to have that help. So the first thing that I really want to go over is sourcing. When people ask me, where should I be applying for jobs? Everybody's favorite place typically is going to be LinkedIn, unless you're like a true introvert like me and hates most forms of social interaction. LinkedIn can be a very common place. There's a lot of users on it. There's a lot of oversight. You can look at a company page. You can look at people that work at that company. There's a lot of opportunity there. And there's also a lot of good filters. Let me look based on location, based on industry, based on company size, all those types of things. But when it comes to sourcing, at the end of the day, I don't really care where somebody sources, whether it's LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Dice, a startup focused job board like Y Combinator, or it used to be called Odd and now it's called Welcome to the Jungle, or AngelList, which is now something else. I can't remember what it is. Maybe that's Welcome to the Jungle. It doesn't really matter where you're finding your job descriptions because the same issue persists from platform to platform. If you think of advertising, advertising is usually taking place regarding a product that already exists, right? So what came first, the product or the advertisement? The product came first because you can't advertise something that doesn't exist, right? And job descriptions on these job boards are kind of advertisements. They are advertising something that has already been created. It existed at one point and now it's currently being advertised, okay? So when it comes to sourcing, I want to source where a role, where a job description has originated from. Where was it originally created? That's my one of my biggest selling points is you need to be a truly early applicant. And the reason why I need to say truly in that sentence is just because you applied to a role that was posted on LinkedIn an hour ago doesn't mean that that role has really only existed for an hour, right? And so being a truly early applicant, being able to validate and verify how old is this position before you spend the 5, 10, 15 minutes submitting your application. Because if you're applying to a role that's 2 or 3 months old and it's taking you 10, 15 minutes, you could have spent that 10, 15 minutes finding a role that was posted a day ago or 2 days ago, right? And so I think that every company, in my personal and professional experience, there are two types of companies. Every single company falls into one of two buckets. One is a company that has the internal infrastructure to create a job description internally and receive applications internally. And I'll show you an example with Microsoft in a minute. When that happens, is or when that process happens, you can say for certain that that is where that role is originating from. So, using the example of Microsoft on LinkedIn, you can apply and find roles for Microsoft on LinkedIn. But when you hit apply, it redirects you to the Microsoft company page, and then you have to sign into Microsoft's career portal to then submit your application. Why would you not just be looking on the Microsoft company career page for roles? They even have, and this is not consistent with every single company, but Microsoft itself has a specific feature on its company page where it says when that role was posted. And so when you take that understanding of this is where this role is originated from, I can see when this role originated, that's how you can really focus on being an early applicant. So if I minimize here and I just go to the Microsoft career page. Students in recent. So let's just type in software engineer. Okay. And we can bucket based on United States. We can see here, this was posted a day ago. This was posted a day ago. This was posted today. Cool. What does that really mean? Is this where this role is originating from? Let's validate. If I click into it and then I click apply, what happens? It wants me to sign into Microsoft specific system, right? And this is all by Microsoft, internal Microsoft. I'm not being redirected to different places. That's how I can say with certainty that this is where roles are originating from, right? So if we were to apply to this position, we would be an applicant within the first 24 to 48 hours. That would be what I would consider a truly early applicant. Okay. So that's the first type of company. And you can use a company career spreadsheet like this so you can help track and circle back to companies where their career page, where their receipt of your application, where that process originates from, right? So I have this company here called Upstart. I have this company here, which is Microsoft. And I have things bucketed by company size because it makes more sense for you to circle back to companies of a larger size than a smaller size more often. The smaller a company is, the fewer the hiring they do typically. So if you take just 10% of Microsoft, let's say that's the software side, that's almost 19,000 employees. That's a significant number. So I would circle back to Microsoft career page rather than Upstart, which I think is at under 500 employees, right? So we really want to understand and click on our saved link here, right? I can dial in my URL by putting in all these different filters, experience, work site. So I have software engineer, individual contributor, meaning not manager, full-time role, up to 100% remote. Then I can sort by most recent. I can then save that URL and post it in my career page URL section of my sheet. So then all I have to do is click one button and see, oh, what was posted in the last couple of days and scroll through. Okay. So this is for the one type of company, one of the two types of companies, right? This is the company that has the internal infrastructure to create a job description and receive your application all internally. Okay. The second type of company, that's the second bullet point or this third bullet point in this full list. This is for a company that doesn't have the internal infrastructure to create a job description and to receive your application. What they have to do is they have to outsource to a third party site in order to receive your application. They have to create a job description on that site and then they can receive your application. The five that I have worked with most consistently that are most worth your time are going to be these five. So you have Lever, Greenhouse, Smart Recruiter, Workable, and My Workday. And we'll talk a little bit more about My Workday in a minute. But using a search like this, you can't go to any of these individual sites themselves and use it like a job board. Like you can't go to workable.com and type in software engineer and see all the things that we could see from Microsoft. What you're going to have to do is do a Boolean search. So if I just go to google.com so you can see this URL pasted a little bit more clearly. Uh, Copy this. So what we're doing here is we're structuring a Boolean query, right? We're telling Google specifically, hey, we would like to look for singular web pages of which these are the things we're looking for and these are the sites we're looking on. Okay. So using this logic, we can say software engineer up here. So software engineer. What we're doing with this is we're saying any singular web page where the term software engineer and the term United States or USA and the term remote and the URL, the site is consistent with one of these five job sites, we want to see it. So we can hit search. The next thing from here is we can click on tools and say anytime past week or past month. I'm going to change to past week. This role was not able to be applied to until it was created on this platform. This was created 2 days ago. This was created 3 days ago. This was created 22 hours ago. So when it comes to being an early applicant, you can use this, and this is 596 results just in the last week. So there are 596 singular web pages of which these main terms here that we plugged in, software engineer, United States, USA, and remote, are all consistent. This is how you can really focus on being an early applicant. Okay. These roles did not exist for these companies until they were created on this platform. You could open up any of these positions, find the company name, go to the company website, find the role, hit apply, and guess where you're going to be redirected? Exactly where you already identified where the company first existed on the job description that you sourced from this third party site. So if a company doesn't have the internal infrastructure to create and receive your application all internally, the next best place for you to look is by using this Boolean search, and you can get a lot of really good results. Okay. Another feature of this, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we go into resume content, but you can structure the search to be very specific to your skill set. Because if somebody says, hey, I'm a software engineer and I'm looking for a role, my first question is, cool, what kind? right? Are you front end? Are you back end? Are you full stack? That at least gives me a broad understanding of your skill set. If you say full stack, especially full stack, my next question is be cool. What kind, right? What is your tech stack? Are you Python? Are you JavaScript? What's the deal, right? So let's say that we're a JavaScript developer. Why would we look at any software engineer position where our main language is not mentioned? So what we can do is we can add another string. We can say and JavaScript. Okay. So now when we type this in, we're going to massively shrink our results. So there were over 400 roles, 400 web pages where all of our terms were consistent that didn't have anything to do with JavaScript. But now every single web page that we're sourcing here at least has one iteration of the term JavaScript, right? And we can do this for JavaScript and CSS and HTML, or Python and HTML and CSS, or Python and PyTorch and Python and NumPy and Pandas and Tableau, things like that. So we can really dial things in. Software engineer also isn't the best term to use here, because what else do we have? We have backend engineer. We have front end engineer. We have full stack engineer. We also have a completely different. We have back end developer, front end developer, full stack developer. And for each and every one of those, you also have front end, one word, front space end, front hyphen end. And so, how can we capture all of that information? Where I would do it is I would say developer or engineer. So now we're looking for the term developer or engineer, of which we're kind of expecting it to be front end, back end, full stack, etc., and JavaScript, right? So if I hit enter here, what did I do? Forgot a quotation. There we go. Tools. Now we have 326 results. And again, this is just created in the past week, right? So now we have a very specific list of roles, and not companies, but roles that we can seek to apply to in good faith because we have sourced it at least a week. And we can put on a custom range. Let's say we only want to look from last Friday to today, last couple of days. We still have a whole bunch of different results, right? We can go and say past 24 hours. Now we have 46 results. So this was created 12 hours ago. This was created 13 hours ago. You'd be an exceptionally early applicant if you were to use this methodology. Okay. So that's really the first main step here. And the reason why I really want to hammer this in is some of these sourcing examples. So I have a couple of roles here, one from Greenhouse, right? That's one of the 5 sites that our Boolean search is looking for. When you're on LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, or what have you, you can click apply and then be redirected to Greenhouse, right? It's not just the redirect that matters, though. It's not just applying on Greenhouse that's the solution. If I take this and I go to Google and I paste this in and I go to tools and I go anytime and I just want to find it, this role was created January 23rd, 2025. I had a student apply to this role 2 days ago. So this was actually created 8 weeks ago, right? So just because the job board, air quotes, job board, is consistent with one of the 5 that we're really trying to target with our Boolean string, it really matters that you check to see how old the role is from its point of creation. Okay. So this one, again, January 23rd. Another good example is this one right here. So I went to LinkedIn. This role was posted an hour ago. And then I went to the company page to try to find it. It doesn't exist. This role does not exist on this company page. And so where would you find something that was just recently posted but doesn't exist on the company page? Speaking as a former tech recruiter, it's very easy to set up automations to post on major platforms like LinkedIn, Glassdoor, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, and so on and so forth. Okay. So if I post something on my company page, I'll usually give it 4 to 6 weeks before I would have my automation kick off to post it somewhere else. I guarantee you that's what's happened here because I also played around with senior Java developer, AWS developer, and whatnot, and there's nothing that matches the job description that's mentioned here on LinkedIn. Okay. So this role has been taken down from the company page. So although you may be super excited and try to apply to this position hoping to get an interview, I bet you this role has already closed because it's been taken down from the company page. Okay. So it's really important for us to understand where we're finding a job description, where are we identifying how early or how old this position is really matters in the job search. Okay. So I'm not so anti job board that you can't use LinkedIn or Glassdoor or Indeed for anything. Um, I think LinkedIn is a great place to look for companies. I didn't know that this company existed until I found this position. So what I can do is I can go to the company page and say, hey, how does this company actually, the same thing that we did with Microsoft, how does it run their actual hiring practices, their application process. So I can just find a particular role, hit apply, be redirected. Okay, so it wants me to submit my application, my resume directly to their company, of which their format's pretty jank. That might be a me problem though. But here, now we know at least specifically roles for this company originate from the company page. So the fact that it doesn't exist on the company page, but it does exist on LinkedIn, red flag, right? I wouldn't want to spend my time submitting an application on any platform, let alone an easy apply. Okay. So where you source your role really matters. But if you really like this company, guess what you can do? Copy, go to your template here, paste your URL. I don't think I grabbed it. Oh, I'm on edit only or view only. Make a copy, and I'll send this link out to you guys if you want it. And then you can paste and build this out to be exactly what you want it is with your own specific version of it. Okay? So that's how you would really look to identify are you an early applicant? And that's only a piece of the puzzle. That's one singular piece. Okay? What questions do you have on sourcing? In the chat, come off of mute. Let me know what your questions are. We'll take a second.
One question, first of all, Johnny, that's everything you're showing is as you show it, it's like that makes so much sense. This makes so much sense. And the
Mm,
tools, honestly, the Boolean queries, would you mind sharing um the base example in the chat for
sure.
everyone?
Yeah.
Yeah, no questions. I do want to say that was just actually really insightful. I never thought about um, how it was broken down in terms of it was posted a day ago, but how long has it actually been kind of open or available? So a lot of helpful tips there.
Thanks, man. I'm glad you got some value out of it. And I think that's where kind of the emotional side of this gets into it. I'm applying for roles that I think I'm a really good fit for. And we'll talk about your resume content and context and whatnot in just a second. And that will make even more sense after that. But if you're like a perfect fit on paper for this role and you submit your application and you get crickets back, that kind of sucks, right?
Mm,
Like I'm a really good fit for this position, but I didn't hear back. Well, if you're applying to a role that was actually filled 2 months ago, created 3 months ago, I mean, it makes sense. So being
yeah.
an early applicant is a big part.
Focus the efforts
Exactly.
where they will actually work best.
And just saying, it took me quite a while. I had to put on past week, 25 miles or remote. I had to do a whole bunch of stuff just to find a position that wasn't promoted on LinkedIn, which hey, if you pay more money to the platform, they will show you roles that somebody paid them to do. And so it's
Hmm.
not necessarily the best fit for you. And so just keep that in mind when you're going on different platforms. I think LinkedIn is great to identify people. I think it's great to identify companies. I don't think it's a great place to apply for jobs.
Yeah, makes sense.
Cool. Other questions?
So in that query search that you're doing with Google,
Yes, sir.
how about if we want to exclude the word senior from it?
Oh, fantastic question.
Great question.
Fantastic question. So this is going to be a terrible, terrible time. And I'll show you why. So if I go back to Google and I type in our string here, I'll say developer or engineer, and I'm going to say and JavaScript, just like we had before. We're going to see a lot of senior, a lot of lead, a lot of staff, and your engineer brain is peaked right now. You're firing on all cylinders. I want to not see those. What our string is doing is it's looking for a single iteration of any of the terms that we're searching for, right? So by combining all of these things, we would expect to find software developer, software engineer types of positions because we're looking for a programming language and the term developer or engineer, right? If we put the operator not and we say not senior or not SR, what that's going to do is any singular web page that has the term senior on it is now going to be scrubbed from our view. And the problem with that is often on junior, entry level, associate, level one types of positions, there's going to be a bullet point or a responsibility or a piece somewhere on that job description that says work alongside or under senior engineer, senior developer, right? Or work with seniors, be mentored by seniors. And so we're encountering a baby and bathwater situation, right? We're removing everything when we're going to miss a lot of really good, genuine job descriptions if we include not. So what I would say at that point is don't spend the time opening the tab for something that you know you're not qualified for. So from this list, I wouldn't even bother looking at this job description. I gloss right over it. I'm not senior. Full stack, it doesn't have any specific description of that I can see from this view of a level of experience. So I'd open that in a tab. I'd open that in a tab. Senior front end, I wouldn't open that in a new tab, and I just go down the list. So instead of forcibly shrinking your circle, you want to generate your circle of I'm looking at these 5 sites. Now I'm looking for developer and engineer on these 5 sites. Now I'm looking for developer and engineer in JavaScript. When you say not, you're going to shrink that circle down to a singular dot. It's going to eliminate a lot of really good opportunities. So what you could do instead is sort of eliminate more noise by adding more things from your skill set, like HTML and CSS or things like that. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
Strong.
Cool.
Do
Cool.
you know the if you wanted to just explore and experiment with it, what would be the syntax for the not? Would it be
Exactly the same.
and not? Oh, not. Got it.
So not, and then do your parentheses and your quotations inside, and
Hmm.
say senior, and we go down to 104 results.
Yeah.
So, and I may not have done this. There is a finite amount of space in which this will work. So you make sure that you're really dialing things in, and not doesn't always work. So like right here we have the Java senior developer. So
Hmm.
it doesn't work 100% of the time.
This all makes me realize I could be using Google a lot better than I
Oh,
typically do. You know?
if you get used to using your Boolean searches on
Yeah.
Google, the same thing can work on LinkedIn. So when you're looking for people at specific companies that have specific job titles like technical recruiter, and their location is, I'm in Savannah, Georgia, if I want to look in Savannah. Now, granted, LinkedIn has all of those built-in filters, so I could just use the original platform. But what if I wanted to say something that wasn't a part of their filtration system? Now I could add it myself.
So in the search bar of LinkedIn itself, they support the same Boolean syntax.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
So I can say technical and recruiter and hiring, for example, and then click on people. So now on all of these profiles that I'm looking at, the term hiring must be a part of their profile.
Mm.
Technical and recruiter must be a part of it. So now if I wanted to look in my area, I could say Savannah, show results. Now I'm looking at a much smaller list. What
Mhm.
I would do for myself being a veteran is I'd leave it here and I'd say all filters, past company, United States Marine Corps, and see if I have anybody that I have anything in common with. So all of these people have something related to the Marine Corps in their profile. So chances are if I reach out to them, more times than not, I'm going to hear something back. So that's how you
Mhm.
can utilize platforms like this. And just like for Microsoft, if I wanted to do the same thing, I could type in, let's do technical recruiter. And I could say United States Marine Corps. Microsoft is based in Seattle, and I am a University of Washington graduate because I'm originally from Seattle. So I could also say that their education came from University of Washington. So see if there's anybody that's doubled up. There's 3 people. Okay. So that way I could really get some very, very, I mean, this is niche on niche, right? This is somebody that's in technical recruiting somehow, some way on their profile. This person was a past tech recruiter, current senior tech recruiter, technical specialist and technical recruiter, I bet is what that cuts off on. Was in the Marine Corps, had some experience in the Marine Corps, and has something related to the University of Washington. That's three people on the whole platform of LinkedIn, of which there are millions. So
Mhm.
you can use this sparingly or as much as you'd like. But again, if you want to put on a filter that doesn't exist, you now know how to do it. Great question.
Yeah, great information.
Anything else?
I have a quick question about the senior roles.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of times I've noticed that even entry level or junior level positions, when you look in the description, it says we want you to have 2 or 3 years of
Hmm.
experience. Is it still worth applying to those positions? I mean, I've rarely ever seen any position that says zero experience is fine. So is it still worth it to apply to those positions? Is there any truth to
Hmm.
companies don't post junior or entry level positions as much as a senior position, but maybe they do have an entry level or junior position if they're recruiting for a senior position?
Fantastic question. Ultimately, I would still apply as long as it's not asking for a massively unprovable amount of experience. A lot of what I would recommend somebody do is what is your amount of exposure versus experience? If you've been in school actively working with these technologies for a year, year and a half, you may not have quote unquote professional experience, but you probably have more hands-on experience than most other applicants. I think the biggest area where that shows itself is computer science graduates. Just because you have a degree boot camp. So then he had the degree, and then he had the experience and the exposure of actually hands-on programming and code, got a job very quickly. You don't need to have that kind of a background, but you need to just be able to be comfortable talking about what's the difference between having 2 years of experience versus I can perform the exact function of this role as it pertains to the role itself in the job description, right? And that just breaks down into your ability to communicate that in an interview, but also your ability to reference that kind of information on your resume in terms of your resume's content and context.
Mhm.
Um, the other thing that I would say is just because it was put together doesn't mean that it was put together well. It surfaces every once in a while. Back a couple of years ago, it was with Swift, and now it's with some form of AI tool. Um, the creator of Swift, the iOS programming language, found a job description for 10 plus years experience in Swift development required. He said, well, this was on Twitter at the time. Like, dang, I can't apply to this. I created the thing and I only have 5 years of experience. So that kind of stuff happens, and now I just saw one a couple of days ago on some AI tool. Like it's only existed for 2 years, I made it, but I don't have 10 years of experience, so I guess I can't apply. So
Mhm.
just because it was created doesn't necessarily inherently mean that's actually what they're hiring for. The way I view job descriptions is it's a list of problems that the company has, right? They're trying to find somebody that has the best predisposition of being the solution to those problems, right? So if you are able to articulate in terms of your content and context of your resume, I am the solution to those problems, you're largely going to be successful as long as it's not like 5, 10 plus years of experience required. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
So what I tell my students, fellows, clients, whatever you like to call yourself, I say if the job description says the number three and the icon or whatever you want to call it plus, so 3 plus, it doesn't give a 4 or a 5 or anything like that, apply. If it says 1 to 3, apply. And that's also something that comes up when I talk about the Boolean search. The Boolean string is can I search for roles that have a predisposition for amount of experience? And the answer is yes and no. The same reason why we don't want to use not is it's a very literal search. So if you say 1 to 3 years, like 1 to 3, that string of characters, you're only going to find a job description that has it phrased 1-3, right? So you need to be very specific with your syntax there. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to find any job description outside of that very, very specific. So again, think about how you can establish the circle of what you're looking to find, and then refine that to the certain point where you have decent volume and it's specific enough for you to go off of, not so overwhelmingly specific that you eliminate 90% of the roles that you could actually be a decent fit for if you just took a look at them. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, great question. Anything else? Anyone?
Hello, I'd like to say that it's it's really great this thing that you got because it's it, it creates uh something that you can look at.
Mm,
So what I'm saying is that you know, I'm surprised that there's not more people here because it's valuable information. Um, I just wanted to say that, and also I have a little bit more. I have a little bit. I have a little bit more uh, ways to go in order to get a job.
mm.
So yeah, I just wanted to say I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say that this is really good information. So that's all I wanted to say about this.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. One other thing that I didn't really mention is a really easy way, because you mentioned just it's easily accessible and people can see things very quickly. A really good way to check on the state of the industry, the state of the job market, is to do a quick Boolean search. So if I just do, I'll copy this string one more time and I'll paste it in here. And I'm just going to do developer or engineer. Oops. I'm not going to be lazy. I'm going to say in JavaScript. Okay. When you go to tools and you click on past week or past week, look and see how many results. Um, I do this pretty much all day, every day, day in and day out for the last decade. When it comes to bad hiring times in the year, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, the holidays towards the end of the year, you would be hard pressed to find four roles to rub together to make a fifth role that's been posted, right? So, and that's also how a lot of scams on a lot of job boards manifest themselves because they float to the top easier. Um, and so, if you ever want to just get a quick vibe check, essentially, of how is the job market doing, you can chuck in a Boolean search and say, how many new roles were created this week? That's a really easy way to check. Like I said, end of November, early December, pretty much all the way until after the inauguration happened, there were probably maybe 15 positions per week. And that was pretty slow, like really slow. But then after that, we were seeing 1,000, 1,100, 1,200. And that's with even more specific searches than what we're doing right now. So, um, thought that was important to share. Is if you want to have just that instantaneous check, you can drop this in and just look at the search results.
Yeah, and it's, there's so much media out there with clickbait about, the state of the market, this and that. This is a really nice way to just be able to quickly check for yourself. If once a week you run this search, just kind of keep your eye, you can understand the state of the market really, really quickly, which is great.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Cool. All right. Blazing through to content. So I'm just going to leave it in this view. No, I won't. I'll leave it. I'll go back to slideshow. So your resume has words on it. A job description has words on it. And so when we're worried about this terrible process called the application tracking system or ATS, and for those that are unfamiliar, it's a content-based filtration system where if you do not have a prerequisite percentile of keywords from the job description found in your resume, you will not make it through that filtration. And so if you're applying to positions and getting rejections and or nothing back at all, chances are that you're getting stopped by this application tracking system. And so when it comes to content, you really need to understand that your resume only does two things, and a job description really only does two things, and it's the same two things. Your resume has words on it, and that's content. A job description has words on it. That's content. The next thing that we're going to go over is context. How is that content structured? Job description, how is that content structured, right? So when it comes to content of your resume, it's a very literal sense, just like our Boolean string. We need to be literal. So if a job description is mentioning, for example, the backend technology Node.js, is that Node.js? Is that Node space JS? Is that Node.js one word? Capitalization doesn't really matter, but in terms of the word itself, you need to have a fair match. Problem solving, problem space solving, problem hyphen solving, communication, written communication, verbal communication, oral communication, written and verbal communication. All of those are different permutations. And so you need to make sure that you have enough content match from the job description versus your resume to make it through that process. And so my preferred tool slash technology for this is a software tool called JobScan. And we'll use JobScan here together in a minute. But that really gives you an easy breakdown of these are the keywords, hard skills and soft skills from the job description versus your resume. And then you have something to go off of. So when we talk about the application tracking system, it's not this completely wicked system. You just need to make sure that you have the right content. In an extreme hypothetical, you could copy the job description, paste it in a Google Doc, export to PDF, submit that as your resume. Congratulations, you're a 100% match for the job, right? That gets to a real person. What are they going to do? They're going to say, bruh, that's the job description, and then reject you, right? So it's not just about content. You have to make sure that you structure that content in a way that makes sense to your reader. So it's a good piece and it's a piece of the puzzle, but it is just a piece. Okay? And I'm going to skip questions for this so we get to context, and that will probably generate better questions. So we talk about context. Context is your resume or the job description's formatting. We don't just say a bunch of words like a skill section and call it a day, right? We have experience, we have a summary, we have bullet points, right? So formatting or context is how all of that content is structured, right? You have defined sections and you have words within those sections. Your bullet points themselves are really great places to optimize your formatting, your context. I always refer to this XYZ format. X is what you did, Y is how you did it, and Z is the outcome. Rather than have a project description of made personal portfolio site using HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React. It's not inherently bad, but you could break that into created an accessible, responsive, mobile-friendly, singular web page utilizing HTML for styling or CSS for styling, React for functionality, deleted unnecessary pieces of the React library to increase load times, things like that, right? This is what you did, this is how you did it, and this is the result, right? So you can utilize all that same information but have it make so much more sense to your reader. And you're also utilizing more of the content from your skill set rather than one singular bullet point where your reader may be brain dead at that point. They've seen 1,000 other resumes before they've gotten to yours. They don't understand that Java and JavaScript are two different things. Java is not a shortened version of JavaScript. It's like car and carpet. They're not the same. They may not know that, right? So when you have a specified and articulate and organized format, that can really help your reader understand what it is that you actually accomplished. Just like if I were to tell you, I increased sales of our product by 1,000%. That sounds really good. But what if our product was a singular penny, right? Versus, oh, our product was $1 million worth of product. 1,000% is a pretty big deal, but it's a lot bigger deal if the product was $1 million versus a penny, right? So help relevize and bring all that context. So when you say decrease load times by 70%, I don't know about you, but when YouTube starts to buffer, I get like irrationally upset, right? Like, why is this not loading? This is the 21st century. So load times are very important and impactful. If you've ever been on a website that ends in .gov, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about when I say some websites are bad. So make sure that you can articulate what it is that you've done, how it is that you've done it, by what means, and then what was the impact. Now, do we have questions on content versus context before we kind of wrap everything together in a live resume review where we look at all of these pieces and compare it to a role that we source?
So just to in a like a single sentence summary, you would say content being the right keywords, you know, the that match the job description, right?
Correct.
And then context being the structure with which you're delivering it, right? To make
Correct.
it, and are we talking about that being synthesized or quickly readable by a human or an algorithm or both?
Algorithms really don't look at structure. They just look at
Mhm.
content. So again, referring back to our extreme hypothetical, we're copying and pasting the job description, right?
Mhm.
That's a literal description of the role. It's not necessarily well formatted. I mean, if the job description's well formatted, it could be, um, but it's just looking at content. When it comes to
Mhm.
your context, that's when a real person looks at it. So if you want to put a timeline together, if you are a perfect match for the position on paper in terms of content and you've got perfectly eloquent, supportive context, but you apply to a role 6 weeks after it's been created, chances of an interview, not great, right? If you are an early applicant and you make it through the application tracking system, you are then placed in a stack that says, hey, this person scored high in our system and they are an early applicant. Chances are you're going to get your resume looked at. So
Mhm.
that's where being an early applicant really comes into play. Again, being an early applicant is important. So when you submit your application, you have the highest chance of it being seen if you make it through the ATS. So you have sourcing, and then you have your resume's context. Did you make it through the system? But then you also have to make sense to your real reader. So all of those three things are inherently important by themselves, but you can see sort of the order of operations of how one does directly influence the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I liked, thinking about the frustration that we feel when YouTube starts to buffer, or we have even the most minor 2-second delay on a website or
How
something.
dare you?
Yeah, it's real. And so thinking about that with I like pointing that out with the resume too. It's kind of like what you did, how you did it, and why it mattered.
Mm,
Kind of structure. And make it really, really quick and really easy for the person to understand what, why, how, what, how, why.
yep.
Nice.
And pro tip, when it comes to preparing for interviews, the most standard form of interview preparation, the format or technique is called STAR, situation, task, action, and result. I kind of omit the T unless you've been in like a management level position where you're really assigning tasks or delegating. So really it just boils down to situation, action, and result in terms of your interview preparation framework. SAR is identical to XYZ. Situation, what you did. A, your action. Y, what you did. R, the result. Z, your outcome, right? So when you're setting up your bullet points like this, you're also preparing for interviews yourselves. Situation, action, result.
Yeah, sorry, just fixing that.
Got you. And that has so many different permutations, man. It's not rocket surgery. It's what you did, how you did it, what was the outcome.
Hmm.
Yeah, rocket surgery. My wife gets after me for that one. You could say PAR, problem, action,
Yeah.
result. You could say PASS, problem, action, solution.
Hmm.
Same way of saying the same thing. What you did, how you did it, what was the outcome.
Hmm.
Yes, sir. Cool. Let's put this all together. So when somebody sends me a resume for review, I can only review it objectively. So when you go and you pay to have a resume writer write your resume, that's great. Speaking as a resume writer, that's awesome. We can totally rework your resume, but that's only from an objective standpoint, right? Out of what you have contained on a piece of paper, I can only essentially reformat it. I can't add new content that I don't know that you have or that you don't, right? When you have a job description, a role that you are seeking to apply for, now you have something subjective, right? So when we review this resume, we're going to look at it objectively. How are the sections? How is the structure? What is the context? But then we're going to go and use a tool called JobScan after we source a position, and then we're going to look at it subjectively. This resume in relation to this particular position, what do we need to do to it? Okay. So our objective review, we have software engineer intern profile, enthusiastic software developer eager to apply, proven
Johnny,
problems.
quick interruption. Would you mind making the
Sure.
text a little bigger, if
Yes.
possible? Thank you.
I am on, let's see. How do I view? 100%. How's that?
That's great. And we could even go 150 worked great too.
150? Okay. I'm presenting on a PC, but I'm technically presenting on a Mac, so I'm trying to figure out button combinations. Cool. My docking system is PC, but my computer's a Mac. That's what I was trying to say. Okay. Coding, proficiency, collaborative abilities to AI-driven software development. Okay. This is a great statement. It has a lot of good keywords: collaborative, proficiency, problem-solving skills, coding, developer, AI-driven, software development. Where's the context? If I'm seeing this, let's say I only look at this portion. I've got 7 seconds to review your resume, which was a review in a journal posted on Indeed after talking to, I think, 100,000 something recruiters. That's the average amount of time they said that they spend reading a resume. So what's the context? Where have you exemplified enthusiastic software development? Where have you utilized these skills? Okay, I could walk up to you and say, "Hey, I'm a great chef. Can I make you dinner?" You'd be like, I don't know you. I don't necessarily trust you. Can I see some examples? And that's totally valid. And that's essentially what we're doing here. We're saying good things, but we're not backing it up in any context, right? So I would say add some context through development of a personal project or by working with a client, freelance or consulting, or in my previous employer, ABCXYZ, right? And the same can be said about with a strong background in these things as demonstrated or exemplified, proven by my involvement in the development or creation or design of ABCXYZ. Give it some more impact. Because right now, all I see is words on a paper, right? But inherently not bad. So objectively, it's fine. I think we could make some subjective improvements already just by the fact that we could relate what this is back to the rest of the resume. Because a summary is to summarize. And it doesn't make any sense for us to summarize skills when we can also summarize experience or exposure, right? Core skills and competencies, software development, programming languages, frameworks, development practices, web design, some formatting, which I'm going to chalk up to Google Docs, not going to hold that against this person. I think you could probably consolidate this a lot. So CI/CD, you could put into like web design, like the software development lifecycle, agile methodologies, things like that. I would also recommend being mindful of abbreviations. So CI/CD, continuous integration, or continuous deployment, or continuous development. Sometimes on job descriptions, you will see that spelled out. So whenever I come to something with an abbreviation, I'll probably spell it out and then put parentheses CI/CD. So that's another way that we can make sure that we're capturing all of those different keywords. Good. Familiar. What I don't like about this is it's already giving me a reason to doubt, right? I don't want to see a resume that has like those little like skill bars of, oh, I'm a 3 out of 5 on this. I don't want somebody with the 3 out of 5. I want somebody with a 5 out of 5. Well, you may be a 3 out of 5, and everybody else may be a 3 out of 5, but you're the one that's telling me that you're a 3 out of 5. Let the assessment be the one that determines your proficiency. Don't sell yourself short, right? So don't say experienced with, just put the thing, right? And you can refer and lean on your experience and your projects and your summary to give me that extra background information, right? Don't give me a reason to doubt. Like in an interview, if I ask you what's your biggest strength, don't start talking about a weakness. I asked you about a strength. Don't give me any reason to doubt, right? I don't need a reason to doubt just by saying familiar. Well, if he's familiar with Cypress, he doesn't say he's familiar or experienced with writing clean code. That's an issue, right? I'm starting to question things. Strong analytical skills. Okay, so they're strong in this. So now we've got experience, we've got familiar, and we've got strong. So don't give me that means of sort of self bucketing you. Let everything speak for itself. Don't give me that barometer to say, oh, you're good at this or you're not good at this. Let that be come from the software engineer that's going to give you an assessment or a project that you take home and you work on. Let that be the determining factor, not words on a page. Because you can't have a conversation about it until they actually give you the opportunity to interview. Version control, probably put some form of IDE in here. I'm sure you've worked with like VS Code or something similar. So you could definitely talk about that. Certifications, good. This opens up the door to improving our content. So if we're hurting for keywords, meaning we need to talk about some specific information like data structures and algorithms or something like that, that would be under mathematics for computer science. Now we have the ability to hit enter and make a sub bullet point. These are some of the topics that were covered in this coursework or certification or so on and so forth. So the fact that you've got certifications, of which just in terms of formatting, you could probably lump in with education right down here. And I'd put key qualifications or experience. I wouldn't put both, right? So you could say certification and education or education and certification. That's 9 times out of 10 how I'm going to structure it if I was writing your resume. Professional experience, freelance work. I think freelance work is great. I think it's a really easy way for somebody to say and help prove that you have experience doing the thing that you say you can, kind of to the point where most people don't really have any experience doing freelance work, but they've done and employed the exact same skill set as somebody that may have just been paid to do so, right? So I think it's a really great opportunity for you to kind of prove the validity of your skill set, your ability to perform the function of the role. I think one thing that you could do is instead of say freelance, you could say consulting, and then you could say software engineer. If you actually have any clients or projects that you've worked on, what you can do is you could do something like this, where it is like project title. And then just like your regular bullet points, that's where you would say like created, accessible, responsive, dynamic, blah, 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 right? So then you could have your 4 or 5 bullet points there and then go on from there. So then, oh, you did all of these things for this one project. Cool. Tell me more about it. And that just brings more structure and more ability to throw in more of all of these things here, actually within context. Actively exploring C++, Java Spring for full stack development, focusing on building scalable and efficient web applications. Not inherently bad, right? So instead of saying actively exploring, created, designed, developed, engineered. That's a really strong opener. That's what you did. How did you do it? You used these things. So you don't really need to change that. What was the outcome? You built a scalable and efficient web application, and you could even throw in some numbers used by X number of people with Y number of load times. It took Z number of hours to build it, something like that. Additional information, this should, based on what it is here, I would throw that in your skill section. And then you could probably bring this down to 1 page, I would assume. Note on 1 versus 2 pages. Most people that have to include project work will need to have a 2-page resume. I don't think that there's anything wrong with it. You need to be able to supply the adequate level of content, and you must supply the adequate and complementary level of context, right? And if you're removing necessary information, I mean, you don't need to go back 20 years. If you're somebody with a lot of work experience that's not necessarily relevant, I would still put what you did in the job the company name and the job title, but you don't need to have any bullet points under it unless those bullet points are bringing you value of highlighting your soft skills or your hard skills, right? So think about that in terms of if you are hiring for this position, would you hire you? I think that puts a lot of people in a good mindset for objectively reviewing. So now to subjectively review this, we are going to go to JobScan. We are going to copy all of this. We're going to drop the resume paste on the left, and then we're just going to go back to our Boolean search, grab our handy dandy link here, and we are going to go type this in and say developer or engineer. Oops. And I believe I saw C++ in there, or Node, or I believe I saw TypeScript. So I'll say or, right? So that means that any of these 3 terms can be found on the job description. So it's a lot more broad than saying and for all of them. So we'll hit search. What did I do wrong?
You're also missing the opening quotes on engineer. Yeah, right there.
Nailed it. Look at that. Past week, and we'll just find. Let's take a look at this position. Okay. So when we use JobScan, we're not looking at the entire job description. We're looking at just the important bits of information. Okay. So just the responsibilities, etc. So I'm just going to grab about you, what you'll do. Okay. So this all the way down to here. And then we'll copy this. We'll go to job scan and we'll paste it and hit scan. So 46% isn't terrible. To me, that means that there's hope, right? There's room for improvement on a content level. If you were a 0% or a 4%, we ideally want to be a minimum of 70 to 75%. Okay. I don't really care about these ATS tips or contact tips because this is all very subjective stuff. It's like, do you have your date formatting in what job scan deems the correct formatting? Do you have your physical address, of which this was blurred out? Do you have the company's name in your resume? I don't think that that level of specificity for every application really makes a significant difference. So I don't really buy any of these ATS tips. I do buy the hard skills and the soft skills tips. So APIs, Ruby on Rails, DevOps, Python, relational databases, production systems, Postgres, scrapers, LLMs, pragmatic, reliability, collaboration, communication. So if this person really wanted to submit an application for this position, they could take this information and say, oh, I'm definitely all these things, and then work them into their resume. The, the easiest place to work these in is going to be in your skills section. However, that's only improving your content. That's not improving your context, right? So it's a band-aid on a bullet hole type of situation, okay? We can work with that though, right? We need to at least make it through the ATS. So we can improve our skills section by including these soft skills. And we can even make a section titled here, like interpersonal skills. And that can be our catch-all. Because sometimes the term interpersonal skills comes up on job descriptions, and I really don't know where else to put it except a section header. So that's where we're going to put it. And then we can go to format, text, and then capitalization, and we'll do title case. Now it looks beautiful. Perfect. Then we can scroll up, and this is where, like if I was improving your resume, I would need you, right? I don't know if this person has any experience with APIs. I don't know if they have any experience or understanding of DevOps or Python or relational databases. I can only glean so much, right? And so this is where the actual person doing the job searching needs to find their actual own data and their own information from their job search to make an influence and to influence their job search, right? So I guarantee you a majority of these terms are going to show up more than once. So I think the best use of your time is going to be taking these terms and holistically improving what we'll call your master resume. That means that now from that point on, you are never missing those skills, that content ever again, right? And that goes to a certain point. You can't always be stuffing things into your resume, but to a certain point, you're going to hit a wall where, yeah, you're going to be 70% a majority of the time, right? Or you need to be looking for a different position. Because that's the thing that JobScan always presents you with. One, I'm not good enough to apply for this role now. What can I improve on my resume to make myself there? Oh, I definitely have a shot. I'm going to work on it. Or 46, I can't really add anything. I'm going to look for a different position. So then you don't have to waste your time filling out an application for something that you're really not a good fit for. Okay. So if we just made that addition, and then we go back to JobScan and we drop our updated version of our resume and we go back to this job description just by adding some soft skill keywords. Let's see what our increase is. Went up to a 60%. That's a lot better, right? And we haven't even touched the hard skills, which technically have a heavier weight than soft skills. Now, based on this profile, I'd probably throw in relational databases and APIs and stuff like that. I'd probably call it there because I don't see anything else. But that's how you would do a subjective resume review, right? That's where you would make subjective improvements. It's not just your resume looking at it without anything to compare it to. You're literally comparing your resume to an actual job description and making calculated improvements. So what I would tell one of my students is do this process for a week. After you improve your skill section and you start to add a bunch of terms that really make sense that you're seeing commonly on job descriptions, what happens if I come in and I do this? You've just removed every single skill, every term that you've just spent a week adding. How are you going to maintain that same level of content? The only other answer is you need to either create a new bullet point to highlight that content within context, or you need to pick a different skill, right? You could improve your summary, you could talk more about your certifications or your education, your experience, or your projects. You have to do something, right? So that's a really good exercise just to get you to think of, I can't just keep adding things that I've never actually done anything with, right? That would also technically be considered lying. You don't have a provable way to say, yes, I have done something with this. You can't really have an intelligent conversation, right? So if you're making content improvements, don't add things that you can't back up, but also add things that you can back up. So then you can not just focus on content, you can focus on context. Because what we want to avoid is this kind of stuff. Real application tracking systems highlight these skills in your actual resume. So, like we just did, we added a bunch of stuff to our interpersonal skills section, right? In your actual resume, that would be underlined. So, if I'm scanning as a real recruiter, I see a lot of stuff in skills and summary. I don't see a lot of stuff in bullet points and in experience, right? That's a big problem for me because that means that we don't really have any provable context. It's just content. And again, like, trust me, right? We only have 7 seconds to make an impression. So that's where the content versus context conversation really comes into play. If you find a role as quickly as possible after it's been created, you submit an application that has good content, you'll make it through the ATS. If you're an early enough applicant, you'll be placed in a stack for manual review. If you have good context in addition to your content, you will make sense to your reader. That will result in an interview. So that's kind of the whole spectrum of sourcing, resume content, resume context in a nutshell. What questions do you have? I know we're over time.
I'm happy to go over. Oops, sorry about the phone there. Happy to go over time here. This is all again fantastic info. One question that comes to my mind while you're chatting about
Sure.
the resume review. What's your take on asking ChatGPT
Hmm.
at all for improvements?
Great question. AI in general works really well if you do two things. One, you ask it a good and detailed question, and two, you can recognize a good result. Okay. So if I go to ChatGPT and I say, hey, rewrite this bullet point, I want that bullet point in the XYZ format. I also don't necessarily know that ChatGPT is going to understand what I mean by the definition of XYZ. So whenever I use ChatGPT, I would say, rewrite this bullet point in the XYZ format. X is what I did, Y is how I did it, or the skills that I used, and Z is the outcome. Rewrite this bullet point. That's how you can use AI tools to at least help get you started. Good writing isn't really good writing, it's good editing. And if ChatGPT helps give you content to then pare down and edit, send it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I was thinking with that resume, like one of the things that I would recommend doing is, take the initial description and just, paste it in there and say, how would you improve this, right? And give
Yeah.
it as much context as you possibly can. Give it context like you're, applying for a job, you want to show that you've got experience and you're capable. With that in mind, how would you improve this? And at a very minimum, it's going to get rid of any typos, formatting
Mhm.
kind of, issues, which to me are, and maybe I'm old fashioned, kind of a red flag right out of the get-go, right?
Nope,
Because
totally valid.
if you've got general typos or sentences that don't really make sense, to the average reader, that's gonna lower your chances of getting through. Um,
Two things that I'll always flag till the end of time is putting things in the right buckets. So when I see React listed as a framework and not a library, I'm like, that takes 1 second for you to recognize that React is a library. It's not a framework. It operates like a framework, but it's a library, right? And
yeah.
so to me, with my art my very rudimentary understanding of development, I'm like, either you don't really know or you lack attention to detail. And that's enough for me, right?
Mhm.
It's that instantaneous little cue or your tense is off. Are you speaking past tense, present tense? Are you using punctuation at the end of every single bullet point or just a couple, right? You can leave the period off when you go to bullet points. Just do it for all of them, right?
Mhm.
Or put the period there for all of them.
Yeah.
So 100%.
Yeah, and I think not, that's kind of one of the perfect use cases in many ways for ChatGPT at all, AI, because and you can also ask it to, really look at it with a very critical eye, right? It's going to
Mhm.
point those things out. React is not a framework, right? You have inconsistent punctuation, that type of stuff. So it's definitely worth a pass. We all have a very
Definitely.
good editor at our fingertips now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing I'll say is no matter what you do to your resume, I would always try to run it through some kind of scanning tool. You may not want to use JobScan. There's Jobalytics, there's ResiMatch.io, there's Simplify Copilot. There's a lot of different tools out there. Just make sure that on some level, regardless of what you're doing to your resume, you always go back and double check. Because there are times often where ChatGPT will work on something, but it still won't necessarily accomplish what we were initially setting out to do, right?
Mhm.
So what I would say is if you're looking to make improvements, give it a very specific list of things to do. Out of these keywords that I am missing from my resume, work them into these bullet points.
Mhm.
Utilize the XYZ bullet point framework, and then I'll define it and then go, right? That means that it has a specific list of things. It's not making assumptions or hallucinations based on, artificially creating something for a bullet point for me. It's improving what I already have. And it's taking the specific keywords that I've already given it out of the things that I have from the job description, not everything that's listed, right?
Mhm.
So you can do stuff like that to, again, ask a really good question and always proofread everything. Make sure that it's actually valid. Because once it's on your resume, it's game for conversation.
Right. Absolutely. One other thing I was thinking when looking at the, for instance, web scraper was one of the terms I think in the job description or web
Mhm.
scraping. Um, that's a there are 1,000 tutorials online about how to build a web scraper in Python or Java or you pick your language that are going to take somebody maybe or YouTube videos, right? Would that lead to a GitHub repository where they walk you through how to do web scraping with Beautiful Soup? And there's so many different options and tutorials out there because it's interesting stuff and it's super usable and it's a way to kind of hook people into how programming can be fun and interesting and cool oftentimes. But you don't really know how to do that. Go to Google, go to YouTube, go to GitHub, find an example, spend a couple of hours with it. Now, sure, you don't say that you did it professionally with a professional work experience, but you can say, oh yeah, I've done some web scraping just like in my in my free time, and you can speak to that. All of a sudden, it's not like a no, it's like a conversation you can have.
Correct.
And very oftentimes the interviews, they're not looking for a thesis on any kind of technology. They're looking
Right.
that you can speak to things intelligently and that you've got a curious brain, right, that will seek solutions and kind of do the work and is inherently motivated in the subject matter.
Definitely.
If you can prove those things, that's a really good way to get to the next interview.
And it's so important for you to bring stuff like that up in the interview, hopefully they ask you about it, because a lot of the times it's do you have the thing or do you not? The recruiter doesn't really know, right?
Hmm.
And so you can help provide that information, that context. This is how I use this thing, and they go, oh, that's the same thing. We use something else.
Hmm.
Perfect. Let's talk about it, right? I've done curriculum builds for a lot of different businesses, and I've used a lot of different systems. And so when it comes to curriculum development, do you have your own LMS, learning management system? Do you use Google Docs? Do you use Microsoft products or do you use Google products? It's all the same stuff. I just may not have done it in exactly the same way that you want your stuff done. You may have your own personal in-house LMS. Shameless plug. So
CodingNomads.com.
CodingNomads.com. Um, so it really just depends. Can you
Yeah.
articulate that well on paper and say, look, these are all the things that I've done with it. And then we can have a conversation about, oh, yeah, let me pick that up.
Yeah.
Sure.
One
You don't
other
need to
thing,
be an expert. You need to be aware. And
right.
that's where we talk about subject matter awareness or exposure and subject matter expertise, right?
Mhm.
All of them have their own points of value.
And with what you have seen in the market recently, everyone's
Mm.
talking about AI. That
Yep.
either AI is going to take all of our jobs, or everybody needs to be using AI tools. But there's so much out there, right? And so many different ways to interact with it. What say you on kind of the nature of somebody who is in the learning software development, wanting to get into likely their first job in software development with all of this kind of AI information that's flooding the airwaves. How would you look at that, or what would you recommend?
Do mechanics still have jobs?
Yeah.
I have replaced my car's alternator. I've worked on my tires. I've worked on the engine. I am like two left feet for hands. I am the least handy person that you could possibly imagine when it comes to vehicles. YouTube has taught me everything. If YouTube is still around and mechanics still have a job, software engineers will have a job despite AI. It is a tool in the toolbox. It's not a replacement for the mechanic.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And one thing I'd add is starting to use the tools.
Yeah,
right? Because
absolutely.
one thing we're all going through a process of kind of accepting AI into our day-to-day lives, especially those of us that work in technology. Um, but it's not going anywhere. And the
Mm-mm.
tools are very, 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 very capable. Like for instance, the Cursor IDE, I've been playing with quite a bit lately, and many of these other tools. I think showing that you're interested in these technologies and that that you're already experimenting and using these tools and or familiar with these tools, because I think maybe what not right now, but in a year or two or three's time, those who are very familiar with these tools and how to use them and kind of, for instance, how to interact with OpenAI's API to
Yeah.
do complex conversations, right, with the ChatGPT models beyond just like a single prompt and an answer that you can get through the ChatGPT website. We can interact with these services via REST APIs in any language that you're programming in to build, to bring these AI features and functionalities into your applications, which I think is going to become more and more a very regular day-to-day thing, as well as the tools for developers that are meant to make developers more productive, right? There
Hmm.
is a line to walk there with that. If you're still learning, I would honestly recommend to turn off the autocomplete of the AI, right? Because it might actually inhibit the learning process.
Hmm.
But I think companies are going to be more and more and more looking for people who have at least exposure or awareness of these tools and these capabilities. So a general recommendation I would make for people in the job market right now.
Definitely change your mindset from resistance to revolution. Like, how
Hmm.
can I revolutionize my skill set, my ability to perform the function of my role by utilizing an extra tool?
Right.
I'm no expert on passing technical interviews, but one of my best friends, he is a high-level engineer at Fidelity Investment. And he's always said that if you do not have the skills that I do not have the time to teach you, you will not get the job. So even if you fail a technical assessment, that doesn't mean that you don't have the skills to do the job. You can articulate what resources you would access, what problem-solving process you would do, who you would consult, how much time you would take to work on this problem before you sought a senior or some form of solution. That's problem solving, right? All these data structure and algorithm tests and problems and whatnot are so removed from the problem solving process nowadays. I mean, you can Google that and you'll find a thousand people arguing about it. But really, it's, do you have the niche solution to their niche problem, right? Not everybody is going to always have that. But if you can articulate your ability to problem solve, even if you do poorly on an assessment, you can move on. You can move through the process because nobody's going to have the right answer every time. The difference between a junior and a junior says, "What's that?" And a senior says, "Oh, I've done that 100 times." Right?
Absolutely. Any other questions or thoughts from anybody before before we break? Nice. Well, thank you
Sweet.
all so much for coming. Jonny, thank you so much. Such useful information. And I know that we had a limited number of people on that were able to attend live, but there was quite a number of people that registered, looking forward to the recording. And so I'm just very grateful that you share your time with us and share your knowledge with us. I think I can speak for everyone that this was, yeah, well done. Just it makes so much sense, and it's actionable steps. Use these queries.
Mm,
Check these sites. Look for the date of the actual publishing of the job description. Content versus context. It helps to. It's still a challenge, but it focuses your efforts to really put them where they're best used, right?
mm.
Um,
Of
and just fantastic. Thank you so much, and thank you all
course.
for joining. And one last plug for Coding Nomads is that for those of you that are still learning, come to codingnomads.com. We've got all the courses, technical courses to get you up to speed, all the way up to a professional level, and all kinds of fantastic career mentorship, career services, one-on-one meetings with folks like Jonny and myself and Kim and others. And yeah, we would love to chat with you. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time. Speaking of
Be
which,
well.
April 16th, we'll be meeting again for another career services office hours with Jonny.
So
Um,
ready.
yeah. Thank you so much, Jonny.
Thank you guys. Be well.
Bye bye.